your way. WSBB.
And we are back. Got a lot to get to and a lot to cover on this Tuesday. And we're going to welcome a guest that is, well, she's a familiar face to us. I think she's spent some time over the years in that very chair. Miss Victoria Maxwell, good morning to you.
Good morning, my dear. Thank you very much.
So before we went on the air, we actually were kind of discussing some business because there's a lot that you take care of for us. Sometimes I even call you in a panic and I don't know what's happening. You're like, just take a breath. We can walk through this. It's not a problem.
We will get through it.
Victoria, you have been with the WSBB family for a chunk of time. I think almost from the onset.
Yes, ma'am.
So you've seen a lot of changes and a lot of progression, and you have really ingrained yourself in our charming community. So it's very upsetting on a personal level, even for folks that might not know who you are, to pick up and read the paper and hear what your family has been going through. And this has been an ongoing struggle and an ongoing battle. So what I'd like to do is kind of hand things over to you, as we're all going to be familiar with the headlines that we have read. And this has just been a tragedy all the way around. But I think the recent developments pile tragedy on tragedy and injustice.
Yes,
so you've been in the New Smyrna area for how long?
Since 2007.
And raised your family here?
Yes, ma'am. I raised 3 children. I am tied into the community. I am a small but mighty web designer. Locally, my reach, I currently maintain nearly 80 local New Smyrna Beach business websites.
80?
Yes, ma'am.
Ooh, how do you have time to do all that? And to handle and tackle the challenge that you are facing now. So you raised your children here. They went to school here?
Yes, in New Smyrna Beach.
And one of those children, your son, Devin, he's had a lot to overcome himself.
He has been fighting for his life, literally, since December 11th of 2022.
Now, on that night, he and his girlfriend, and it was his best friends.
Yes.
They went out, had a night, as young people do. And now they are calling it a night and heading home. And unfortunately, there was a driver that was on the road.
He was on State Road 44. And for those who are not familiar with it, this is a 4-lane divided highway. Thomas Petrie was driving the wrong direction in the eastbound lanes. He was going westbound in the eastbound lanes.
So he was intoxicated. This is not a rumor. This is actual fact.
This is facts. He and Joanna Dillon had spent 6 hours drinking at the Fraternal Order of Eagles clear over in Orange City, Florida.
So 6 hours drinking, and he's coming back onto State Road 44. He is very, very intoxicated. He's driving on the wrong side of the road.
And this was reported.
Other vehicles saw this.
The first call to 911 came in at 2:03. This lady was able to avoid Tom's car because it came in at the 4-way intersection of State Road 44 and 415, right in front of the Circle K.
Okay.
So she was able to pull over. She was able to avoid. She made the call to 911. That was at 2:03 a.m. At 2:07 a.m., a secondary caller to 911. She was driving the right side of the road. She was going westbound in the westbound lanes. And she could see from across the median that this driver was unable to maintain lanes, the truck, the Toyota Tacoma, and also reported that the headlights were off. So, of course, she was able to avoid it. The next call that has come in was the report of the head-on collision between my son and the wrong-way driver. That was at 2:13.
That many people before the accident happened saw this, reported it, and now there's been a head-on collision, and your son was driving the vehicle that was hit.
Correct.
By the wrong-way driver who was drunk and had no lights on.
Yes. And the impact, my son's vehicle was overturned. None of our children had seatbelts. 2 of the passengers were ejected. Devin's car landed with tires on the ground. Directly following this, there was another automobile involved in the accident, and this was a Toyota Prius. This gentleman happened to be a witness in Devin's trial. I'm going to fumble his last name, so I'm not even going to attempt it. But he had indicated he was traveling home from work. He's quite familiar with the road. He engaged his speed the speedometer because he knew the speed increases, and he saw something. He saw something going on, but wasn't sure what it was. He disengaged his cruise control, and he said, literally, I slammed right in. Now it's a stationary truck. Now this truck has stopped, and he was unable to avoid the crash. His car was also totaled.
His car was totaled. He was okay.
He was okay. He was actually a very tall gentleman, and he was driving his girlfriend's Toyota Prius. And what he had said in trial, he had the seat all the way back. And fortunately and thankfully, his airbag, although it deployed, it did not impact him. So,
isn't it funny how these little things, the universe places these, what are the chances he'd be driving his girlfriend's Prius as a tall gentleman, you know? The passengers in the car,
yes,
Devin's
ma'am.
girlfriend and his friends, and this has made headlines in part because there is a social media celebrity that's involved here.
Correct. That was his girlfriend, the love of his life, really, Alexandra Doolin, who was well known in the platforms of TikTok. She had nearly 1 million followers. His best friend, Kyle Mosier. The other young lady in the car, actually, they had just been introduced to Ava Fellerman that evening. This was a girlfriend of Allie's. And how that came to be, the girls were traveling on a vacation, and for some reason, this young lady's passport wasn't valid, so last minute change of plans, they decided to head over and hang out with Devin and Kyle.
And they did not survive.
They did not. No.
And Devin himself nearly did not.
He arrived at Halifax Hospital as a level 1 trauma. He was unresponsive when he got there. He had a shattered pelvis, a collapsed lung, and a large spleen from his upper extremities, the top of his head, to his waist, embedded with glass. And
now the driver of the vehicle that hit them.
Yes, ma'am.
He left. He left the scene of the accident.
He did. I was reached. Devin's phone was reached from in ICU, and we have, I have access to discovery and testimony, and obviously I was there in trial. But yes, he crawled out or rolled out of the passenger side, leaving his own passenger.
Yeah, because the woman that he was with was also with him and injured.
Yes, ma'am. She was the driver of the truck. She was too intoxicated to drive. She had been shut off at the Eagles. She gave Mr. Petrie her keys. And I don't know I knew that they were familiar with each other, but he did. He left the truck. He walked over to view the carnage that he left.
Oh, he took the time to walk up and see the accident that he caused and still left.
Yes, ma'am.
That's classy. That's nice.
And walked back to the truck. And I don't know this to be fact. This is what I was told from somebody on scene, that he took the alcohol from the vehicle out of the truck. And there are pictures that the Corona box was there, and then took off on foot. He was picked up, I think, 4 miles down the road by a passerby.
So all of this, he has caused injury. He has caused fatalities. And he's able to make it 4 miles just fine.
Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am.
Mm-hmm. And so he was charged. What charges was he looking at?
3 counts of vehicular homicide for the deaths of Allie Doolin, Kyle Mosier, Ava Fellerman. 3 counts of leaving the scene with death to those 3 parties as well. 1 count of reckless driving with serious bodily injury to his passenger, Joanna Dillon. And 1 count of reckless driving leaving the scene of serious bodily injury to Joanna Dillon.
Okay. And what about the DUI part?
They were not able to test him. I want to make this very, very clear, because this is an issue that I have. Our state attorney has never filed charges for the injuries to my son. My son was left with 4 other people at that scene. My son sustained serious, significant injuries and will never be the same. He had a shattered pelvis with plates. He'll never walk the same. Emotionally, mentally, he's never the same. But yet, no charges. Yes, he left the scene. And I truly, in my heart of hearts, I know that it wasn't intentional. I certainly believe that it was an accident. That is forgivable. Mr. Petrie's actions after the incident are not. Mm-hmm. He turned himself into a hospital at 4 p.m. the same day, but not before he sought the advice of his attorney, because he refused to provide a urine sample or blood samples because his attorney told him that it could be subpoenaed in proceedings. So he was aware enough of the situation. This was an incredibly high-profile case.
He waited it out until he knew, all right, if they take a blood sample, it has been enough hours now.
He refused it. This is 14 hours after the accident. This is at 4:14 in the afternoon of Sunday, December 11th.
And so he's now facing the charges that he is, which in the grand scheme of things, I don't feel are nearly enough for what has happened.
Yes, ma'am.
But now, as Devin is trying to recover, and he's also mourning the loss of these people that he absolutely loved,
yes,
knowing he was behind the wheel. It wasn't his fault, but he was behind the wheel. So you have to wake up with that every day, try to recover, and also face, I can't imagine the kind of sorrow and grief. He now is looking at charges.
Everything was taken from my son that day. 2 of the most important people in his life were ripped right out of his arms. And yes, now he's facing charges. Our state attorney, when they charged Tom Petrie and Devin, it was April 7th of 2023. They charged my son with 3 counts of vehicular homicide and 1 count of reckless driving with serious bodily injury to Joanna Dillon. They based that on the factors of speed as well as being impaired and under the influence of alcohol and THC.
But his level of impairment was not. I read those papers.
Yes, ma'am. And I can say this, if I had been more involved and looked more closely at the evidence, I don't think we would be here today because I would have brought a lot of this to light. We had complete faith in our legal counsel that they were going to do their job. We had 2 firms representing them. They did not. They did not. I'm not an attorney. I have no legal background. I'm just plainly looking at the facts. I can see a toxicology report. I can also see a charging affidavit that was signed by Florida Highway Patrol that states on there reason under, impaired, and this may be minor, but it is very significant. If you're going to take the stance to charge this young man with the repercussions being he is facing 30 to life, please make sure that all of your documentation is appropriate and reflects the facts of the case. And in his charging affidavit, it says he was going 30 to 40 miles over the posted speed limit, and that would put him at 105 miles per hour. That's simply not true.
It isn't true, but the facts being skewed in this case, it's a double travesty because the other gentleman, he took a plea deal.
He pled guilty.
And your son did not want to plead to something that he did not do.
Yes.
And now what has happened, he's behind bars now. And
yes.
What he is facing is just, it seems surreal.
Yes. He is strong in his conviction that he is not responsible for the death of his passengers. There was no other option presented by state attorney. The one plea that was offered on paper, and I don't think anybody wanted to see this to go to trial because it's a coin toss, in essence. It's a 50-50 shot. And, Devin likes to say it, and I agree with it too. Guilty people take a plea. He is strong in his conviction. He is not responsible for the death of his passengers. And he told our defense team, actually 10 to 20 on paper, in backroom discussions in Devin's ear, and I was witness to this conversation. What my son was told exactly was, if you take responsibility for the death of Ava Fellerman, it's kind of like your other passengers really didn't matter. We can maybe be looking at a 0 to 5. And he said, I'll take 30 on the chin before I admit to something that I did not do. We're going to go to trial.
Oh, my goodness. Victoria, we have to take a quick break, but
Yes,
I hope
ma'am.
that you can stay with us
Sure.
for a little bit.
Yes.
All right, stand by. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with more. You are listening to the great voice of Volusia County. And we are back. It has certainly been a very busy Tuesday morning here, and welcoming back again Miss Victoria Maxwell, who we were speaking with earlier this morning. Thank you so much for being patient and for staying with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for keeping me. It's quite a long story.
It is, but it is an important one, and I think that we need to shed some light on what is all around a tragedy on a tragedy on a tragedy.
Absolutely.
And knowledge is power. So raising the awareness for folks in our community that might not know the ins and outs of what has happened. And there is already lives that have been lost and another that is on the line.
And I've said this a couple of times because we are a united family as a result of this tragedy. You know, we did not know the Doolin family, the Mosier family, the Fellerman family. We were not connected, but unfortunately we are now. And we are strong. We will not allow the loss of another child by the hands of Tom Petrie.
And they have really actively spoken up and said, you know, we don't want to see Devin punished in this manner.
Yes, ma'am. They feel strongly that it was an overreach. Unfortunately, the family members have not been treated very nicely by our state attorney. This is not something for me. You could look at News Journal articles. The Doolin family was actually threatened with an arrest right after Devin.
What?
Yes, there were plans for Devin to visit the Doolin family before the arrest. And he was scheduled to go up and visit them. And in open court, it was indicated that if any discussions were made, they would hold him in contempt. The News Journal picked up the story. I'm just sharing it. It's appalling. In trial, I was in front row, and it's very, it's a strict environment. You don't want to talk, no phones, head forward. I heard more than a half a dozen times our victim's advocate from the state asking people to move from standing behind my son in support over to the prosecuting side. And
when he refused to take the plea deal, and rightly so, wow. How long was the deliberation?
The deliberation for the jury? Less than 20 minutes.
Less than 20 minutes. For someone they said was speeding, that was hit by an intoxicated driver driving on the wrong side of the road with no headlights and left the scene of the accident.
Yes, ma'am.
So where is Devin right now? Where does that put him?
He currently, his bond was revoked. He is in Volusia County Corrections. He's on day number 44. They took him directly from the courthouse when they entered the guilty verdict. Legally, where we stand currently, we do have a motion into our courts for a retrial. We have brought in a new team to defend Devin. There are several instances of ineffective counsel where our defense team allowed the introduction of inadmissible evidence during his trial. And it's really unprecedented at this point to pull a new team in. Normally, the people who take you through trial will see you through sentencing, but they failed. They failed.
And that's not the only mishap. I mean, if you have followed along, if you've read the News Journal, if you've been on top of the news stories and the reports, there were a lot of things that were not handled properly.
Yes, ma'am.
A lot of things that were left out and mismanaged. And so this is where we are now. And if it moves forward, what is Devin looking at?
For his charges, his sentence is 30 to life.
30 to life. So, in effect, he would be serving more time than Petrie.
Yes, ma'am.
And folks that are listening, as I know there's been a lot of support and a lot of rallying, how can folks help? What can they best do right now?
I have, and everybody wanted to help initially. The Doolin family had set up a GoFundMe that ultimately was pulled down. Another gentleman had set up a change.org petition. I sort of rallied everyone in. I have developed SaveDevon.com as a central resource to provide information, ways to help. The biggest push really is to, what we're calling for is an investigation to make sure that everything was done properly. And we need our officials to be able to make that decision. They can email support. There are recent articles as well as changes, updates. I maintain it, so I'm able to at least put the information out there. And it's the central source, really, SaveDevon.com.
And I imagine on that website you would direct people to reach out to this person, send a letter to this person.
It is laid out on how to help. I strongly encourage people to create your own dialogue, put in your own narrative. But if you are at a loss of words, I have completed a simple copy and paste format, copy, paste, send. And we are hoping to get it to the attention of our Governor, Ron DeSantis, our Attorney General, Ashley Moody, our State Attorney, R.J. LaRizza, the two prosecuting attorneys, Dan Magaro, Mike Willard, and Florida Highway Patrol personnel.
Give us the website address one more time.
It is www.savedevon.com, DEVIN.
Miss Victoria, we are wishing you all the luck, and certainly everyone is invested in this, and I hope that you will continue to keep us posted as this progresses.
I can't thank you enough for the opportunity to help spread the word and make people aware. So many people nationwide are chiming in and just questioning, really,
how could this happen?
How could this happen? Because this sets precedents for anyone else. Any one of ourselves or our children can be in this position. We have criminalized a victim of a crash.
Well, we are a community that rallies together, certainly, and this is one instance where that needs to happen in spades. So stay with us and keep us
Mama
posted.
Bear is very happy. Thank you so much.
We appreciate you. We're wishing you all of the luck. Our hearts are certainly with Devon and with the families. And on that note, we're going to take a quick break. You're listening to the great voice of Volusia County on the stations of WSBB Radio.